developed and apply that more broadly in the way that the government goes about its business. Thank you very much.
Speaker.
I call Kiritapu Allan.
Well, I must thank the previous speaker for his wise words of advice, that we listen to his sage command to, consult and engage with people in a pragmatic and bipartisan way. Look, I'm very proud of this government that does exactly that. It is about providing space and opportunity for all New Zealanders to actually engage in the big issues that concern us. In this instance, I must acknowledge, though, the trajectory of this bill. It commenced in December 2016, off the top of my head, and under the previous government. And I want to acknowledge the work of our Minister for Revenue, the Honourable Stuart Nash, for taking on and developing and working very hard with IRD officials and others to develop a fit-for-purpose tax scheme for to ensure that multinationals are paying their fair share. I think just listening to this debate and having had the opportunity to contribute at all stages, and also sitting on finance and expenditure and listening to the widespread concerns of the submitters, I want to acknowledge that there has been a number of submissions from tax experts and practitioners that have expressed that perhaps this bill doesn't go far enough. And then there's been, to the contrary, that it's gone too far, too fast. And I must say it's actually a bit of a pleasure, really, to be a part of this process. We've had to work across the aisle to, work through the very nuanced considerations to make sure that New Zealand remains a place where business, global business, feels like that they can call its home and conduct their affairs here, but also to ensure that some of those companies that that we've seen that do operate globally, that have adopted practices of aggressive tax planning and have effectively managed to dodge paying their fair amount, that we've tried to strike the right balance. So I actually really just want to acknowledge Carmel and all of her team at IRD for the work that you've put in, working with practitioners, the industry. I also want to acknowledge the work of Therese. I know it was quite an off-cited quote that she put in one of her papers to us on FEC, that it was the most complicated piece of tax legislation that she'd seen in her 30-odd years. And I do note that that was a sentiment that was reiterated across the board by many of the practitioners, because what we've got here, and New Zealand's not in isolation trying to develop fit-for-purpose tax laws that apply themselves globally. Following from the G20 in December 2015, I think it was, they came up with a 15-point plan. And so you've had all of these countries across the world who are members of the OECD try to, the harm is that approximately per annum there's $240 billion of cash that they consider, that the OECD considered wasn't being paid. Wasn't being paid, and their fair bit wasn't being done. At a more local and domestic level, the cost of tax avoidance here by multinational corporations, they've considered around about $500 million. That's gone up and down the scale, but around about $500 million. And I think for many folks, in considering how that impacts real-life human beings, it can be quite hard to sort of see how tax avoidance in a bubble can have a real-life impact. But I just want to draw attention to the well-considered and thought-through submission of the New Zealand Human Rights Commission that drew on some remarks of the former UN expert on extreme poverty and human rights, Magdalena Sepulveda-Carmona. And that report, in 2014, it said, although taxation policy may seem far removed from the daily problems of the poor, it is, in fact, plays a major role in determining and adjusting levels of inequality in a society and in funding essential services, social protection and poverty reduction measures, is therefore central to realising the rights and defining the opportunities of people living in poverty. And so, Madam Chair, Speaker, Madam Speaker, I just want to really commend the work of our Minister, but I want to commend both sides of this House for being able to work together constructively over a very lengthy period of time to develop a piece of legislation that has been well guided by the officials to ensure that New Zealand's tax regulatory environment is fit for purpose in a global world, and that to ensure that multinational corporations who have decided to operate in New Zealand and call New Zealand their home are indeed, in fact, paying their fair share to our domestic revenue pot. So, Madam Chair, it's my pleasure to commend this bill to the House.
Madam Speaker.
Call. Ian.
Madam Speaker, the member for Rangitikei.
Goodness me. Ian McKelvey.
I don't blame you at all.